Authorities in Turkey have come under fire as the scale of damage and destruction becomes more clear 5 days after powerful earthquakes flattened cities and towns. Many are now blaming poor enforcement of building regulations. It's estimated that some 75,000 structures have collapsed, trapping tens of thousands under piles of rubble. The death toll from the disaster has topped 21,000 in Turkey and Syria. Search teams are overwhelmed, but the occasional success is sustaining hope that more survivors will be found. A 10-day-old baby was pulled out alive more than 90 hours after the quake hit. His mother was also brought to safety. Cheers were heard after this 17-year-old was found alive after being trapped under debris for 94 hours.
Nasıl hayatta kaldın? Futbolcusu ya, saflarına bile uzanmış. Kendi tuvaletimi yaptım, tuvaletimi içtim hayatta kalmak için. Şöyle bir şey yapalım. Böyle hayatta durabildim yani Rabbimin sayesinde. Ne hissettin aşağıda? Abi yalnız ya sizin gelmenizi bekledim aslında sadece tek başıma. Siz de geldiniz Allah'a şükür teşekkür ediyorum hepinize.
Over in Turkey's Kirikan, German rescuers have pulled out a woman who was trapped for 104 hours beneath a heavily damaged building. This comes hours after she was heard crying in the rubble, and efforts were made to bring her to the surface. A situation in Syria is equally dire, with millions of quake victims now dependent on aid. Relief efforts there have been hampered by the ongoing civil war. Access is bottlenecked by a single corridor via Turkey. The first UN aid convoy only made it into Syria yesterday, 4 days after the quake struck. Trent Murray joins us live now from Malatya in Turkey. Trent, there continue to be these incredible reports of people being rescued from under all that rubble. It's more than 100 hours since the earthquakes rocked both Turkey and Syria. More support, we hear, is arriving from overseas now. Will the increase in resources, though, see a boost in the number of vital searches that are taking place?
Well, that is certainly the hope for authorities here, who are just not giving up hope, and they really believe that with more international support they can continue to search through the piles of rubble. We have just heard a miraculous tale of survival a couple of hours from here after 105 hours trapped underneath the concrete and the rubble. A toddler and his 7-year-old brother have both been pulled out alive and are now in hospital in a stable condition. It is almost unbelievable now that after 5 days they are still finding people that are clinging to life, and with more international aid arriving, it is hoped that they'll be able to continue to search through as many buildings as possible. We know that in a number of cities now they are starting to switch from rescue mode to recovery mode. They don't believe they will find anyone else, but in some other sites they are still searching, often using thermal imaging cameras to detect people under the rubble. I mean, I'll just tell you a little bit about where I am right now. I'm in the heart of Malatya, and what you can see there behind me is what is one of the oldest and most historical mosques in this part of Turkey, in central Anatolia. It has stood for hundreds of years, but it wasn't able to be able to stand upright after the earthquake. It has now collapsed. A lot of emergency tents there as well now providing accommodation, because this is a bit of an open area of the city, and so it is safe from any more buildings collapsing down here in the violent aftershocks which we are feeling.
Trent, so many buildings collapsed in Turkey, and we hear that many of them were newly constructed as well. Building standards, they've come under scrutiny now. Many people blaming shoddy construction for these mass casualties, and not just the earthquake. What can you tell us about that?
That's absolutely right. And I have to tell you, actually, that was one of the first things several people said to me when I first arrived on the scene here on Tuesday, was that they just couldn't understand why some buildings which were quite new just crumpled and fell down in less than 10 seconds in some cases, while some older buildings, which were older, obviously, they managed to stay standing. And so we know that there has been a probe launched in the 11 provinces which have been affected. The Turkish government is going to investigate some of these these building companies, because there are some accusations here that potentially corners were cut in order to save money. Cheaper materials may have been used and didn't follow the earthquake guidelines that are in place. This is one of the most active parts of the world when it comes to tectonic movement, and so there are rules in place. But if they have been skipped, then criminal probes will certainly be launched to look into that. Of course, for many people right now, they just can't return to their homes, even if they're upstanding. They're now structurally not sound, and so that is why they're having to sleep in tents like those ones behind me, or try and find alternate accommodation with friends or family, a couple of 100 kilometres away from this earthquake zone.
Trent, thank you for that. Trent Murray there speaking to us live from Malatya in Turkey.